Hello, Omni Dogs and Omni Kittens. It's Omni Dog here from Omni Dog's Vault. Here with Chat Omni Dog, also known as ETL. ETL, how's it going?
What's the what? I'm good. I'm here to, I don't know. I didn't tell, I was saying this to tell Jess this, that we are the #1 rated new Ultimate Spider-Man review show on YouTube. #1. They can't beat us. So
Right on, man.
Thank you to our fans. Thank you for the comments and the likes. I want to get more views and more likes than Tyler Blunt. So that's my goal. And then next, Taylor Brown. So, I'm coming for him.
Okay.
So, but things are good here in the Omniblock Vault studio. What do we call this? The Midwest studio?
Sure. The Midwest Omni Dog, the Omni Dog Chat Vault. Omni Dog Vault.
I love being in the Omni Dog Vault family.
Right on. We're happy to have you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So, how are you?
Oh, good. Good. So far, so good. I am happy to have the show to do about Spider-Man, especially this Ultimate Spider-Man, which if you saw the first episode, I have not read. I've had the books for a number of years, looking for a good excuse to read, and this has been great.
Yeah, I mean, so we read issues 8 through 13.
Yeah.
Second arc, second trade paperback. If you haven't trade paperbacks, it's called Learning Curve. I just looked that up. So what'd you think?
I think that this is some of the most fun Spider-Man I've ever read. I am just having a blast with it. And Learning Curve was well titled because he's going in sort of, blindly into these things as a 15-year-old. And a lot of times he's getting the crap kicked out of him, especially when he tries to take on Kingpin, who practically flicks him away with a finger on their first encounter.
Yeah, I think the Kingpin design is great. So all the
let me while you talk, let me show some of it.
So I think a lot of the design of the what was the group called? The Enforcers? Is that the And so it has like I'm terrible at names. It has like, so there's the great Kingpin design. He's like a wall of man. And then there's like a cowboy. There's another giant guy named Ox. And then there's Fancy Dan, I think, who is a little guy with a hat, as all fancy men wear. and then, of course, we're introduced to Electro, who, if you try to find it, his design is very cool, but it's kind of like a bald guy with powers. I mean, it's
right here.
He's got like a cool leather jacket. I mean, so we're getting introduced to recreations of old Marvel bad guys, and this does. I think the Kingpin is just a great. So the Kingpin in this world is everyone knows he's the bad, the Kingpin of criminals, but he also, at the beginning, I think he's holding a fundraiser for some charity or whatever. So he's trying to, that's a great scene where they throw Spider-Man out a window, seemingly to kill him, because I don't think they know exactly what his powers are. And so he kind of is able to stick to a wall, and everyone looks at him, and then this goes back to their party. So, and they take his mask. So they look at, that was a great another moment too. Like they take off the mask, and we live our entire lives with fearing Peter Parker being found out as Spider-Man. And then they all look at him and they're like, "Who is this?" No one has any idea. Which again, I think it was like in the Tobey Maguire movie, right? And then he loses his mask, and everyone's like, "It's just a kid," no one. He's not famous to anyone, but. We were really deeply introduced to. He was in the early run, but Jay Jonas. Who's the Jay Jonah?
Jameson,
yes. The publisher of the Daily Bugle. He's a bigger character in this. It's also great where they kind of set up where Peter Parker is going to take photographs of Spider-Man and sell them. The age-old trope of how Peter Parker made his money, and then they just dashed that by they hired him on to be a tech support computer, which I think is great. It's very smart, and so we don't have to deal with him setting up his camera with webs and spider and taking spider photos of himself for decades to come, or we may go back to that. I don't know. And then the other best, the other arc of this is the growing relationship between him and Mary Jane.
Yeah,
who is a great design. I think Mary Jane looks great. I think I was kind of poo-pooing the art a little bit last time, but mostly just to have something to criticize, But yeah, but I love his designs. I do feel like all his faces look a little bit similar, but I'm not an artist, and I can complain if I want. And the whole last issue, the 13 issue 13, is just basically him and Mary Jane in his bedroom, and then he confesses to her that he's Spider-Man. Then she laughs uncontrollably and doesn't believe him. And then there's an awkward moment where Aunt May comes up and breaks them up.
They're hanky panky.
Exactly. We have a 13-year-old son, so I have a feeling I'm going to have to be doing that in the future. I know my mom did that to me, cock blocked. So it's nice to see it in the comics. This run didn't seem dated, or like 20 years old to me. I just felt like I liked the beginning a lot. I like this even more. I thought this I thought this was just hitting. I think the Spider-Man, and I've always thought this, I think Bendis does very well. He is able to match the superheroics with the real life, or the other part of being a superhero. And I think the Mary Jane, Aunt May, Peter Parker working at the Daily Bugle, Peter Parker in high school is just as compelling to me as the Spider-Man stuff, which is pretty tough to do, So.
Yeah, the human interest angle is really, I think, very interesting.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It seems like it's a lot of Peter in this, especially in the last couple issues. It's a lot of Peter, just not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Yeah. And I feel that way about the whole second arc. It feels like a lot of Peter Parker, and making the same dumb mistakes that any 15-year-old kid would make. Yeah. But fortunately, he lives instead of getting killed, which he by all rights should have. And he starts to try and formulate some kind of less impulsive route to go about what he's trying to accomplish.
Because the first time he kind of goes out as Spider-Man against the Enforcers, the beginning of issue 8, he kind of gets his ass handed to him a little bit. He comes in all cocky. I will say that I hope Bendis gets better at the Spider-Man witty banter while in battle. Some of those things just land like a lead balloon, and I just hope Again, there's my little criticism for this time. It starts out like, and I'm glad it started out where he kind of has, and he also has like a mission. He's trying to find who was paying, or who the guy who murdered Uncle Ben was kind of working for. And then he found out through the newspaper that Kingpin is the kingpin of the city. So then he logically thinks, well, I bet you he is a good place to start on who was employing the murderer of my uncle. And so then so there is a mission, there is a realistic point of view on this, and I think it plays out really well. And then he oftentimes at the beginning gets his ass handed to him, and then learns from that. And like the second time he goes into Kingpin's lair, but his multi-billion-dollar sky tower, he thinks it through and has a more of a good plan to get out. I don't know. It's just I'm enjoying this a lot more than I remembered enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Like, it's just a great read.
Yeah.
Not shocking to anyone who has
right.
read it over the years.
Well, I can see why it was popular, because I am really enjoying it. Having read Spider-Man growing up and very familiar with the Silver Age character.
I was going to ask, well, what is your relationship with Spider-Man and like as like, you know, percentage of your collection, or like, you know, like are you very well versed and been collecting them for years?
I did read him in my early years of collecting. I had, especially when I was a teenager, maybe 13 to 15, I really had a thing for Spider-Man and Captain America and Falcon. I really loved those two runs. And if I recall correctly, that was probably when I was around 14. So I had a lot of Spider-Man and Cap and Falcon. Those were the characters that interested me the most. And I had read all the early Silver Age stories, so I was familiar with them.
Yeah.
So I think this does a good job of rebooting it and making it really interesting and relevant.
Yeah.
To, you know, even though it was published when, I guess in 2000, 2003, sometime in the year
2000. Yeah.
2000. Okay. I still think it's fresh and interesting, and I still find it to be compelling. And I know enough about Spider-Man to know about all the big events that have happened to him in all his iterations and creations. So I thought I felt like the character of Electro was probably purposely bland.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the future holds in these issues, though, but maybe they're staying away from costumed villains. This guy just
he wears like a leather jacket with like a cut, basically.
And
he just has powers. He's never explained. And there's other goons there with gun. You know, he's the only one with powers. And I think they even both quip. What, are you a mutant? And how did you get your? You know, they both are asking each other how they got their powers. And it's just it is a very good reinvention.
Yeah.
Like I said last show, like I was so skeptical of this because it's just like it's almost like every time you see a Marvel movie they redo the how they get their powers, or I just don't want to sit through that again. And so like when they're redoing this, I was like, I was just not into it. And I think it takes the elements but just does his own thing. Like he is not like the relationship, like he telling Mary Jane that he is Spider-Man by issue 12 would have been unheard of. It took 40 years, right, or whatever before it came out, so it's like, and again, I think that's more realistic. I think you're a 15-year-old kid and you have this girl that you like, and also you gotta like let it out, right? So I don't know. And also I like the one thing I always I like teen books, and I actually really do love Spider-Man. I started collecting right when he got his black costume, and Secret Wars was like the first. I remember that was my first intro into getting an issue number 1, and I was like Secret Wars, and I read all that. And then when he got the black costume, I was way into Spider-Man then, and I've kind of kept up with him. And he's like probably my favorite, or probably I have more of his in my collection than anyone else, and so it's just. I just think like having him get a team rather than being on his own sooner than later with Mary Jane, and I have no idea if Aunt May, it becomes kind of sitcomish when they keep the secret for too long, or, it's just like, all right. So I thought, and I would just love to I would have loved to have been in that Marvel meeting when he says, I'm going to have him tell Mary Jane issue 12, they were like, shitting bricks, or like I just imagine that the editorial staff was just like, no, you can't do that. He's got to keep it a secret from everyone. It's also so ridiculous that no one equates that Peter Parker got bit by a radioactive spider that everyone knows about, and then all of a sudden there's a Spider-Man, and no one's like, oh, and all of a sudden he's good at basketball. It's like, we moved right on past that. Now no one knows. I was like, who's Spider-Man? It's crazy.
And they unmask him, and it's like no big deal. Who is this kid? Let's toss him out the window.
He's just a kid. That was brutal too, man.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, his human's gonna kill him.
Right.
Well, he also doesn't he squeeze I can't remember. He squeezes some old again, then they put the mask on and squeezes.
The gangster. Yeah.
Yeah. That was.
And then they put the mask on him, trying to tie Spider-Man into organized crime.
Yeah, Kingpin don't play.
No, no, this Kingpin's pretty darn brutal, as he usually is.
And then we see him like on some island at the end, or where he's hidden somewhere, with his lawyer. His lawyer said, "We'll fix this." So I like, again, like, so he's going to come back at some point. We don't know how or whatever, but he's been damaged. His fortunes have been lost right now because Ben Urich wrote a piece. Spider-Man got all these tapes. That was the end of the. It's very, it's very like a TV show in a good way, like the arc of it. So yeah.
So I really liked it, and I'm really looking forward to volume 2.
Yeah, me too. So you have you have the hardcover volume 2. I have the soft cover.
Okay.
We'll move on to that. That arc. Let me look that up.
Okay.
That arc is called Double Trouble, and it'll be issues 14 through 21.
Okay. Perfect.
So, is it all right if I go on to my ETL recommendations?
Yes, this is the part of the show where we have Chad Omnidog's recommendations, because he has some things he's excited about that he's read, and I think it's a good idea to get somebody else's perspective on stuff they enjoy. So take it away.
Jess has got his 15 shows on the interweb that he gets to spread his love everywhere. And I would like to spread my love just in this little corner of the world. So, nothing huge. I got the Wonder Woman by Gail Simone, and I just read the first arc, which I think is issues 1 through 6. It's super annoying that, again, DC is going back to not labeling any of their issues. I find that so incredibly annoying. So I have no idea where I'm in on this. But starts off with Gail Simone being drawn by Tony. Help me.
Terry Dodson?
Oh, Terry Dodson, yeah. And then right now, where I'm getting on in issue 7, I think, or maybe 6, is Bernard Chang takes over, who I really, really love. I was going to try to find a good splash page, but I can't. But anyway, super good. I was telling Jess it's kind of confusing because starts with issue 14 and was published in 2007-ish, I think. And so the first 13 issues, I think there's an early trade paperback of the first 4 issues. And Spider-Woman. Wonder Woman is her alter ego is like she's like a secret agent for the government, and then so she oftentimes wears like a white cat suit and goes on his mission.
That's a call back from the 70s.
Is that right? Did you get that? Did you get that omnibus?
I did not, because I remember not liking that run at all.
Oh, so there she is in her white, like little suit, and for some reason I don't know why she doesn't have her powers when she's in that alter ego, and Anyway, she fights a bunch of Nazis. There's a bunch of talking apes in armor, and who are her friends, and it sounds ridiculous. And there's also this group of Amazons who are there to protect her mother, but then they hated. It sounds more contrived than it is, but like they hated that her mother was going to have a child, and so they actually hated Diana being the daughter of the mother, and so they actually wanted to kill the baby. So then the mother puts them in jail. So anyway, they come back and help them, or are released by the Nazis who are on the mascara. There's a lot going on. It's very good. I'm excited to read more, and I love Gail Simone. I just read her Red Sonja run. I'm excited. I hope that they publish her Batgirl.
Yeah,
because I read the first trade of that and I really liked it and kind of dropped off. So she can do no wrong in my book. So
I agree with that.
My other recommendation is this book called Rosanna. This actually has just words, sadly. It's written by, I'm not going to even try to match and pair there. It's a Swedish novel. Written in the 60s. There's a series of them from Martin Beck. Martin Beck is a murder police in Stockholm, I believe is where they're at. And there's a series of them. They're like I can't remember how I found it, but a lot of like crime writers in America and, you know, coming up in the ranks of writing crime, reference these books, and they finally were starting to get, they were out of print for a long time, and then they went back into print the last few years, and so I picked them all up. I think there's 11 of them. Read them all once. I'm going back through and rereading them the second time. I think I'm in the fourth one. But good. And like Martin, you don't need to read all the beginning, you know, but they do add up to each other. Or they, you know, they build up. Martin Beck gets older. He actually moves up in the ranks a little bit. There's a lot of like kind of like politics of the police, and it's just kind of interesting reading a book in the, you know, written in the 60s and takes place in the 60s, and so everything's a lot slower. They wait. Weirdly, I'm from Nebraska. I went to school in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the Rosanna, who is the murder victim, is murdered in Sweden, but she's from Lincoln, Nebraska. So they spend a lot of time. They spend a lot of times writing letters to a detective in Nebraska and getting back. You know, it's just kind of interesting to see how the world was much slower back in those days. But I love reading crime books. It's probably my number one genre if I have one, and it's great. Last thing I'm going to recommend is a podcast. It is called The Rewatchables. There's a little company called The Ringer. Bill Simmons, who's a big sports writer, but they do pop culture and stuff. And they do this show called The Rewatchables. My wife just watched or listened to the one where they do on The Shining. So it's basically like 2 or 3 guys that work for or ladies that work on the show, and they just talk about. They rewatch a movie. It's always like movies that they deem rewatchable. Like that's the criteria. So the first one they ever did was Heat. They did 100 episodes. I don't know what you call them, the podcast. And then in the 101st episode, they did Heat again. They called it Reheat. You know, Heat, the Michael Mann movie. Yeah. And they're just super. And like a lot of times, makes you want to go rewatch the movie. Sometimes I'll rewatch the movie before. Like just the one that came out this week, they're doing Godfather 3. Now they're kind of doing movies that are problematic. Wow. And they also did, and I don't know why my wife watched Vision Quest, the Matthew Modine wrestling movie, and they just did that. Wife? Yeah, I know. I have no idea why she watched it, but well, as you know, I bitch about her buying. She rented it on Amazon, and I was like, "Why are you renting Vision Quest, the '80s, the classic '80s?" high school wrestling movie, and they actually weirdly not influencing my wife, but like they did a Vision Quest rewatchable. They're just always entertaining. It kind of makes you want to go rewatch the movie, or a lot of times they're movies that you've already very well, like The Shining. So we both listened to The Shining like last weekend together. They're very entertaining, and it's good escapism. And so I'm debating on if I want to sit down and rewatch The Godfather 3 or just listen to the podcast. I don't think I can sit through Godfather 3 again. I couldn't. I struggled through it the first time. I'm not going to rewatch that movie. They do both the other 2 Godfathers, which I actually did rewatch and then listen to the podcast. But watching his daughter act is a real chore. So he is a good director. As an actor, she's a good director. Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, that's ironically, yeah, she's turned out to be a much better filmmaker than. Yeah. But anyway, those are my 3 recs. Wonder Woman by Gail Simone, Rosanna by Imagine Per, and they're a husband and wife team. And I think they're both, one of them at least, I think maybe the husband was like a reporter, and then they started writing these books together, and then they wrote him until his death, and the last one takes place in the 70s. So highly recommend those. And then the Rewatchables from The Ringer, and you can get wherever you listen to podcasts. Right on. Good recommendations. Thank you for those. But I look forward to getting back into the Ultimate Spider-Man, the beginning of book 2. Right, which we will attack this week and report on next week. Yeah. So thank you to the viewers for watching Ultimate Spiderdays, and we will appreciate it if you leave us a like or any comments, and please subscribe. And please subscribe, please like, please view. We need to beat Tyler Blunt and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle show.
ETL has his own agenda. It's clear.
Well, it's the little things that keep me going.
Ha.
Although I will say, I am reading Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I got the first 2 hardcovers because of you jackasses. So I can't complain too much.
Just wait till book 4, then that series really takes off.
Oh, good. I mean, I'm loving it. I'm liking it. I'm not loving it. But I listened to you guys' your episode 4 show, and I was like, you're all in.
Yeah,
I am. Fun. It's fun. I'm about almost halfway through the first one, and it's been really. I like wait, and I have no experience with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Me neither.
Or love, or really interest. So it's like, it's like in our Omni Bros group and stuff. It's just funny how these things kind of take a life of their own, and then you're a little bit like, I just don't want to, but then you're like, all right, I'll try it. And then,
yeah, exactly.
A lot of times people are right. Sometimes they're wrong. But a lot of times they're right. So I'll give Tyler Blunt props for doing that. So.
Excellent.
All right, I've rambled long enough. Sorry, Jess. I know you got things to do.
No problem. To the audience, I say peace and love. Peace and love.
Peace and love, everybody.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.